Dawn was when her husband beat her for 16 years. A Lakota chief woke her with warm bread. The bread was my grandmother's recipe, and I don't know why I made it that morning. I hadn't made it in 11 years, maybe longer. I had the flour out before I was fully awake, working by the low red glow of the coals, and the smell of it, sage oil and rendered fat cut into the dough the way she taught me, filled the house before the sky had any color in it at all. I set it on the sill to cool, pulled on my shirt, went to tend the horses. When I came back, she was standing at my door. I didn't know her name yet. I didn't know anything yet except that she was maybe 40 years old, that her left eye was swollen near shut, and the bruise under it had gone that deep color, not fresh, settled in, the kind of bruise that's done moving and just sits, and that she was holding her right arm against her body in a way that said ribs, not just arm. She didn't knock. She was just standing there, looking at the bread on the sill. I said, "Come in." She didn't move. She looked at me like she was trying to place whether I was a kind of danger she already knew or a different kind entirely. I stepped back from the door. She came in. I cut her a piece of the bread and poured water and put both down on the table and went to sit by the fire, not watching her, just giving her the room. My grandmother taught me that too. Some things you feed and don't look at. The way you'd put grain out for a spooked horse on the far end of the corral and go about your work and let it come to you or not. She ate the bread. She drank the water. Then she sat down on the floor, right there against the wall by the table, and put her face in her hands and cried. Not loud, quiet and thorough, the way people cry when they haven't let themselves do it in a long time, like something cracking open, slow, because it has to. I didn't say anything. I sat by my fire. After a while she stopped. "I don't know where to go," she said. "You don't have to know yet," I said. That was how it started. Her name was Ida. Ida Greer, though I came to think of the Greer as not her name, as the name of the thing she was trying to put distance between herself and. She'd come from the Mercer homestead 3 miles east. Every person in the valley knew the Mercer homestead. Everybody knew Earl Mercer. Everybody knew what went on over there, and nobody had done much about it. Because a man's wife was a man's wife in those years, in those parts, and there were lines that white lawmen did not cross into a white man's home for the sake of a white man's wife. And whatever I thought of that, and I thought plenty, it wasn't my reach. She had a daughter, 12 years old, Clara. That was what she told me, still sitting on my floor. She said, "I left Clara with the Hendersons last night. I walked here. I don't know why I walked here. I've only seen you from a distance." I didn't know what to say to that. I said, "I'll ride to the Hendersons in an hour. I'll bring Clara here. Nobody will bother you on my land." She looked at me then, really looked, that one good eye and the swollen one both. "Why?" she said. I thought about that. I said, "Because you came here." That seemed to satisfy her, or at least it settled something. She nodded once, slow, and looked back at the fire. I need to back up. I need to tell you what kind of man I was by then. Not the kind I was born to be, the kind the years had made. I was 44 years old. I had been the band's chief for 9 years, since my father died. I had 231 people who looked to me for decisions that mattered: hunting rights, water rights, winter camp locations, negotiations with the agency men who came out twice a year with their ledger books and their condescension. I carried that. Carried it right, and I think carried it well. My people were fed that winter and the winter before it and the one before that, which was more than some could say. But there is a cost to being the one everyone looks to, and the cost is this: you have no one to look to yourself. You become the fixed point. Everything orbits you. And you stand there and you hold the center and you stop. I don't know the English word for it exactly. You stop needing things for yourself. You stop reaching. It happens slow, over years, until one day you notice you are moving through your own life the way you'd walk through someone else's house. Careful, competent, not touching anything that's yours. I had a wife, Cora. She died 6 years before pneumonia, 2 days after our son. I don't talk about that. I'm not going to talk about it much now. What I'll say is that I buried the two of them, and then I went back to work because my people needed me to go back to work, and the work was real and it was good and it kept me upright. But upright isn't the same as alive all the way through. That's the man Ida Greer walked up to that morning. A man who'd forgotten how to reach. I rode to the Hendersons, got Clara. The girl was quiet on the ride back, not shy quiet, watchful quiet. She sat behind me on the horse, and she didn't ask a single question. And she watched everything we passed the way you watch things when you've been trained that the world is mostly threat. Her mother came out to the yard when she heard us. Clara slid off the horse and walked to her, and they just stood there. Didn't say anything. The girl put her cheek against her mother's shoulder, and Ida put her hand on the back of the girl's head, and they breathed for a minute. I took the horse to the paddock. They stayed 2 nights, then 4, then a week. I gave them my spare room. I went on with my work. I want to say I was purely generous about it and expected nothing, and that would be partially true. I did not expect anything. But it was also true that having them there was doing something to the air in the house. Clara started talking on the 3rd day. Not much, but talking. She'd follow me to the horses in the morning and stand at the fence and watch me work and say occasional things about the horses in a careful way, like she was testing whether curiosity was permitted. I'd answer her straight and she'd go quiet again, storing it. Ida's ribs were cracked, not broken, but badly enough. I knew a woman in my band, Magpie Runs, who set bones and knew remedies, and I brought her out without making a production of it. She bound Ida's ribs and left a tea for the pain. Ida was polite with her, careful. She wasn't used to people doing things for her that didn't come with a cost. I watched her figure that out over those first days. Watched her wait for the other shoe. It never dropped, and she didn't know what to do with that. Earl Mercer came on the 8th day. I was splitting wood in the yard. I heard the horse and I put the axe down and I turned, and there he was, a big man, red face, the particular kind of loud that means he'd been drinking since morning. "You got my wife in there," he said. It wasn't a question. "I have guests," I said. "She's my wife. You got no business." "Your business with her is done," I said. He looked at me a long time, trying to read whether I'd back off. I watched him read the answer and not like what it said. "I'll get the law," he said. "That is your right," I said. "You think the law will side with a—" I looked at him. He didn't finish the sentence. "Right on," I said. He sat there on his horse, and he was angry enough to do something stupid and almost did. I could see it working in him. But I had the axe in my hand, and I was looking at him with a particular kind of calm, the kind that isn't performing anything, and he decided against whatever it had been. He left. I went back to splitting wood. That night Ida came to the doorway of the kitchen while I was cleaning up from supper. She stood there for a moment. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "It needed doing," I said. "He'll come back. Maybe. He won't get further than the yard." She was quiet. Then, "I've been afraid of him for 16 years, every morning when I woke up. Before I even opened my eyes, the first thing was, is this a day he's in a mood? Is this a day I've done something? 16 years of mornings like that." I stopped what I was doing and I looked at her. "Dawn was the worst," she said. "Dawn was when it usually happened. He'd drink at night and I'd lie there and listen to him move around downstairs and wait. I let that sit." "You're past that now," I said. She nodded, but like she didn't fully believe it yet. Like it was a thing she needed to say out loud a few more times before her body would agree. She started helping around the place on her own, not because I asked, she just picked up what needed doing. She was a hard worker, fast and quiet about it. She knew horses well enough to surprise me. She said Earl had one good one, and she'd been the one who actually cared for it, which I believed. She had that particular ease around them that you can't fake. Clara came out of her shell slow. Not a leap, just a degree at a time, like the sun coming up on a cold morning. You watch and there's no visible change. And then suddenly there's light everywhere. She had opinions about things, strong ones. She told me one afternoon that my bay mare moved her left foreleg funny, and she thought the shoe was wrong on that foot, and she was right, and I changed it, and she was obscenely pleased with herself in a way she tried to hide. I took that horse and worked it in front of her just so I could watch her try not to grin. There were things happening in me that I wasn't naming yet. I want to be straight about that. I wasn't pretending to myself I didn't feel them. I just wasn't naming them. I'd been numb in certain places for a long time, and numbness doesn't always lift all at once. It comes back the way a cold hand warms painful in the specific places where the feeling starts to return. I'd sit at the fire after they were both asleep, and I'd hear the sounds of a house with people in it, a floorboard, a cough, Clara talking in her sleep. And there was something those sounds did to me that I didn't have clean words for. Something that had been missing for so long I'd forgotten what the absence felt like. It felt like weight, good weight, the weight of something that matters. She found me at the creek one morning in November. I'd gone there since I was a boy when I needed to think. It's a cold creek, fast, running off the hills to the northwest, and it sounds like thinking sounds, not quiet, always moving. She sat down on the rock beside me, not across from me, beside. We sat there for a while without talking. She said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "That first morning, when you gave me the bread and then just sat down by the fire and didn't look at me, did you know to do that, or did it just happen?" I thought about it. "My grandmother," I said. "She kept horses. She said the best thing you could do for a spooked animal was give it something good and then take yourself out of its sight line. Let it come to you." Ida laughed, not a lot. "Just a small, real sound. You compared me to a spooked horse." "You weren't spooked," I said. "You were spooked and brave, that's different." She got quiet again. After a while she said, "I want to stay. I don't know what that means. I don't know what you'd want. I don't have anything. I don't have a way to pay you or—" "Stop," I said. She stopped. "I don't want paying." "Then what do you want?" That question sat between us. I could feel it there, physical, real. I said, "I don't know how to want things for myself anymore. I've been doing this a long time." I paused. "But I know that since you've been here the house sounds different at night. I know I've been making the bread again. I know I looked forward to this morning." She was looking at the water. "That's what I want," I said. "I think more mornings like this." It was the most I'd said about myself in years. It came out of me slow, like something that had been waiting behind a door I'd stopped opening. She put her hand on my arm, just set it there, nothing more. We sat at the creek for another hour. Mercer came back in December. This time he brought 2 men with him. This time he had a paper, some kind of writ he'd gotten from someone. I didn't know its actual legitimacy, probably neither did he, but he'd ridden 40 miles to get it, and that told me something about what he was capable of. I was not alone when he came. 3 of my men were there, Kills Water, Bright Hatchet, and a young man named Frank, who was only 20 and big as a barn and usually cheerful. None of us were armed conspicuously. We were just there, in the yard, working. Mercer looked at the 4 of us, and he looked at his paper, and he looked at his 2 men, and whatever he'd imagined happening in his head went sideways on him. "I'll have my wife," he said, but his voice had changed. The sureness was out of it. "She's not yours," I said. "She'll speak for herself." I called into the house. A moment later Ida came to the door. Clara was just behind her. Ida looked at him. She looked at him the way you look at something you used to be afraid of and aren't anymore, not with contempt, not with satisfaction, just with a kind of clear, steady appraisal, like you're finally seeing the actual size of it. "I'm not coming back, Earl," she said. "You're my wife." "I was your wife," she said. "I won't be again." He looked at her for a long time, then he looked at me. Then he looked at his men. Neither of them moved. He turned his horse and rode out. His men followed. Killswater let out a long breath. Frank smiled. I went inside. Ida was at the table with Clara. The girl had her mother's hand. I sat down across from them. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Clara looked at me and said, "Is he gone?" "He's gone," I said. She nodded once like she was filing that away. Then she said, "Good. I need to tell you about what happened in February, because it matters. I got sick. I don't get sick often and I don't like it, and I liked it less because it was bad. Some kind of fever that came in hard on a Thursday night and had me on my back by Friday morning. And it was real enough that my people came in rotation to check on me. And magpie runs came and stayed most of one day, and I was conscious enough to be annoyed by all of it. Ida took over. I don't mean she helped out. I mean she took over. She organized the rotation, told magpie runs what she'd already given me so there was no doubling, moved Clara into the main room so Ida could sleep in the spare chair next to my bed, and when I woke up delirious at 3 in the morning convinced I was somewhere else, somewhere cold, I don't know, not here, she was there. She put her hand on my chest and said my name. Just my name twice. I came back. I don't remember all of the next few days cleanly. I remember water. I remember the weight of another blanket at some point. I remember Ida's voice talking to Clara in the other room, low and steady, keeping things normal for the girl's sake. I remember waking in the afternoon of I don't know which day and finding Ida asleep in the chair, her chin on her chest, her hands loose in her lap. She'd been there all night. I looked at her for a long time. There are things you know in your body before your mind gets to them. The mind catches up later. What my body knew, looking at her asleep in that chair, was, this woman chose to stay. She had nothing keeping her here. She had all the reason in the world to get her daughter and find somewhere new and not look back. She stayed. She put herself in a chair next to a sick man and she stayed. The hollowness I'd been carrying for 6 years, maybe longer than 6 years, was not gone, but it was smaller. It had edges now, which meant it had a shape, which meant it was a thing I could look at instead of just fall into. That is a different thing entirely. I healed. It took 10 days in full. On the 11th day I was up and working, and Ida came out to the paddock and watched me from the fence. "You push yourself," she said. "I'm fine." "I know you're fine. I'm telling you that you push yourself." I looked at her. She looked back at me, even steady, no apology in it. "All right," I said. She smiled. I hadn't seen her smile fully until that moment, not a small one, a real one, open, reaching her eyes. I had to look away. I went back to work and she stayed at the fence and we talked a little about nothing much, the bay mare, whether the winter would hold, something Clara had said at supper. Just talk. 2 people at a fence in February talking. I thought, I have not had this. I have not had this in so long I didn't know I was still hungry for it. I thought I would like to not be the fixed point for a while. I would like, for once, something that is mine. Spring came slow that year. March cold, April cold, first real warmth not until the 2nd week of May. We were in the yard one evening, the 3 of us after supper. Clara was doing something to a piece of tack she decided needed repair, and doing it with total absorption and bad technique but real commitment. The sky was going pink and orange over the hills to the west. The horses were moving around in the paddock, that lazy end-of-day moving they do, heads down, easy. Ida was sitting on the step and I was near her, not far, close enough that when she turned to say something I could feel the warmth off her. She said, "I think I'm staying." I said, "I know." "You know." "I hoped," I said, "same thing mostly." She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know how to do this. I don't have any, I don't know what the shape of this is supposed to be." Neither do I said. I've been a long time not having it, so has Clara. I think we figure out what the shape is. She looked at me. I looked back. Okay, she said. That was enough. With her, it was always exactly enough, no more than what the moment needed. That was one of the things I had come to not love yet, but something in the same country as love, something growing toward it in the dark the way grass grows under snow. You don't see it until it's there. There is an evening I come back to. Summer, late, the valley full of the last long light. Clara was up the hill with two of the young people from my band. She'd made friends there, real ones, the kind you make at 12 when the friendship hasn't learned to be careful yet. I could hear them somewhere up the slope, not words, just voices. Ida and I were at the creek. She'd taken her boots off and put her feet in the water, and was making a face about how cold it was. It's a cold creek, I said. You could have warned me. You didn't ask. She splashed water at me. It hit my leg, she laughed. I looked at her. The last light was on her and she was laughing, head back a little, wholly unguarded, and I thought, whatever this is it. This is the thing I stopped believing I was allowed to have. I reached over and took her hand. She stopped laughing, not because she was startled, she just got quiet. She looked at my hand and then she looked at me, and what was in her face was so plain that it needed no words. All of it. All the years of waking up afraid, all the distance she'd walked to get here, all the mornings since then, the bread on the sill, Clara learning to grin, the days building on each other without cruelty, all of it in her face. She turned her hand over in mine. The creek ran. Somewhere up the hill, Clara laughed at something. Ida leaned her head against my shoulder, just set it there, and we sat until the light was all the way gone and the stars came out, and I held onto her hand and I thought, you came back. You came back to something. You didn't think you would, and you did. Her breathing slowed and I knew she was almost asleep, and I didn't move. I sat there in the dark with the creek sound and the stars and her weight against me, and I don't have the right word for it in English and maybe I don't need one. Full. The opposite of hollow. The fire I'd banked so long ago. Banked so long I'd started to think the coals were gone. Just dead gray ash. Still warm, still there, all this time. Still there.